Hi, I just wanted to share my thoughts on Angel's Flight by... I nearly said Billy Connelly again! I just wanted to share my thoughts on Angel's Flight by Michael Connelly. It's probably going to be a fairly short review because it's a police procedural, so guy dies, copper has to find out who did it. Before writing these cracking books, Connelly used to be a police reporter, so he knows a lot about the universe that he's describing and a lot about the organisations, and I guess he has a fair amount of insight into how all of the different factions and departments and different areas work together, which makes it a really, really compelling and convincing universe, and just really, really interesting to read. Our victim in Angel's Flight is a lawyer who specialises in suing the police, therefore the police are among some of the prime suspects. What makes it a particularly controversial case is that he is a black lawyer and he frequently defends black people against perceived or actual police brutality. This book was written in 1999, it was 21 years old, just like me. And even I can see how creepy that looked in the little viewfinder on the camera. Ooh. Anyway, it was written in 1999 and it makes overt and explicit reference to the Rodney King case all over the place. Rodney King, for those of a younger persuasion, was a construction worker in the US who was really badly beaten by the police in the early 90s. It was caught on camera, there were trials, and the sheer anger from the black community at the way that this man had been treated led to fairly widespread riots and has become something of a watermark moment in the States. The victim, Elias, was about to prove that the police had tried to torture a black man into confessing to a murder of a child that he didn't commit, and Bosch is of the opinion that the real murderer has killed Elias to shut him up and prevent this from coming out. So he goes about trying to investigate the case Elias was investigating, while his colleagues from the FBI and the Internal Affairs Department go about investigating the murder of Elias himself. He hopes, of course, to find the murderer of Elias when he finds the murderer of the case that he's working on. The race element of this story is really important. It is front and centre of Detective Chief Inspector Irving's response. He's really concerned that the public will perceive that white police killed a black lawyer for protecting black victims of police brutality, leading to further riots, and he's very keen to avoid that narrative at all costs. Alongside the politics, it's what makes the book really interesting. Irving wants to use the fact that Bosch is working with black police officers to his advantage to show that they agree with the route that's being taken. Bosch doesn't really want his black colleagues to be used as props to further the narrative for political ends. He wants them to be used as respected professionals, and that leads to a fair bit of tension. There are lots of elements to this that are really interesting about whether the police is institutionally racist, and also, what is more important, justice actually being done or justice being seen to be done, which is quite an interesting theme that runs throughout the book in a lot of different caveats. Connelly makes a real effort to educate Harry Bosch about what white privilege is and what it feels like not to enjoy white privilege as well. And I make these comments knowing that I am white and Michael Connelly is white and Harry Bosch is white, and I make my remarks with that in mind, but it certainly seems to me, I certainly perceive that there are fair challenges to the assumption that rioters are just naughty people who are misbehaving, but there's a real effort made in the book to explain the anger and the frustration and the hopelessness and the lack of power that drives people to do things that ordinarily they might not want to do. I also really like Ian Rankin, and I think where this is really different from a Rebus book, for example, is Rebus has about 5 million different twists and threads and characters and things that happen, whereas this not so much. I think maybe 2/3 of the book takes place in the first 24-36 hours after the murders take place, but it doesn't feel like a slog, it doesn't feel like scene setting. You're actually surprised by how far through the book you are, because you feel like no time at all has passed, you just race through it, and it's so absorbing and easy to read. It's not about big surprising twists that'll knock you off your chair. It's about the process, it's about the police work, it's about the politics, and it's about doing the right thing. And what is the right thing in this situation? Bosch has a very strong sense of right and wrong, but he's up against people who have a very different impression of what that is, and it's skillfully written because Bosch doesn't really concede very much about that, but you do understand where the likes of Irving and others are coming from, and you can see what they're trying to avoid happening. I reckon Riz would be brilliantly played by Genesis Linnea. She is really kick-ass and confident, very assertive, and I really like that she doesn't give in to Bosch. She stands up for herself, tells him what she thinks, and I reckon that's exactly the sort of attitude that Genesis could bring to that kind of role. So if I was casting the part of Riz, that's who I would cast. For some reason I've always imagined Edgar to be Tracy Morgan, and I can't really explain why. I always imagine characters as I think they should look, and I don't really pay any attention to what the author says, but for some reason I've always imagined Tracy Morgan to be the face of Edgar. Carla, I'm thinking and trinking, needs to be played by Nina Susania. There is absolutely nobody else that can take that role. It has to be Nina. Apologies to Titus Welliver, who is playing Bosch in the Amazon series. I know you're probably doing a great job, but you are not Bosch. I've been reading Bosch longer than you've been playing Bosch, and Bosch for me is and will always be Bradley Walsh, who I reckon would be perfect for being the sort of relatively depressed, relatively grouchy, but pretty sharp, no-nonsense kind of guy that Bosch is. Sorry Titus, but this guy is Bosch. Overall, it's another really solid entry in the Bosch series. It keeps going, it keeps you thinking. There are no easy answers to the moral questions. It doesn't shy away from the fairly nasty underbelly of Hollywood, but at the same time there is a case with satisfying answers and a satisfying conclusion. If you're a Bosch fan, please tell me, are you Team Bradley or Team Titus? Have you read it? If so, please let me know, and if you haven't, is it something that you think you would pick up? Until the next video, bon voyage.